Good morning, everybody. Spencer Smith here. We're in the South Seeding Improved Pasture in Fort Bidwell, California on our ranch. Today we're going to be looking at what some of the outcomes were to the composting and interseeding that we did in this particular field first week of April. It's now May 26th. The test project that we're doing is looking at changes in biodiversity, soil carbon, and soil health on these lower land areas, both irrigated, sub-irrigated pastures and improved dryland pastures like this, with the expectation that range planting and compost applications will improve TDNs and nutritional quality of the forages, paired with planned grazing, should help increase forage production and capacity on a per acre basis for these sites. When we started to develop this interseeding mix, we were looking at our soil tests and figuring out what are some of the things that we're lacking in these pastures. So there's a lot of these co-benefits that we're trying to capture when we put in all these different forbs and grasses in these pastures. You know, your chicory is really good at mineralizing calcium. Phosphorus and buckwheat are paired. You've got your legumes obviously are mineralizing nitrogen to help get more fertility and more plant available nutrition throughout. When I planted it, it was snowing, and then it warmed up and it was really dry for about 40 days. And then we had about 10 days of moisture, and now it's drying up again. I think had we had better spring moisture, we would have had better establishment of our interseeding. We've got a lot of good germination here, but just not a whole lot of vigor to those plants. It doesn't bother me a whole lot at this point, because a lot of the plants that we planted were perennials and biennials, which this first seeding year they're going to be focusing most of their energy on building that root mass. So we really won't know the outcomes of this interseeding project until year 2, year 3, to see really how this thing establishes and we fill in these gaps. When I was scouting out this field here just a minute ago looking for a place to start, I found where a gopher had dug a hole this morning, and we can see the soil still has some moisture in it, pretty good pads and good structure. We've got decent soil here, and then right next to where it dug, if we open this up, we can see some hairy vetch that we planted in our interseeding project. Plantain, there's some more vetch over here, and chicory and some of the other grasses that we planted. This pasture is about ready to be grazed. I kind of held off. I was going to graze it earlier with the intent of knocking back these perennial cool season grasses that are already established in the field, allowing for more sunlight to hit the seedlings and create that opportunity for them to better establish. However, like I said, we got about 10 days worth of rain and it got really wet in here, and I thought maybe I'd do more damage running a bunch of cattle over this field with too high a moisture in the soil with compaction and other issues. We're going to graze this field next week. As you can see, the meadow brome grass is headed out. There's a little bit of orchard grass starting to bolt and shoot a head out as well. Those are the two earliest heading plants in this mix, followed by the tall wheatgrass and intermediate wheatgrass that's here as well. And of course there's some alfalfa in this spot as well. So here we can see we've got some annual ryegrass, but we can see in this row we've got some ryegrass and some sweet clover coming in. And then we've also got some plantain and salad burnet, which is a really drought tolerant cool forb that'll stay green all summer. The annual and biannual sweet clovers are coming up pretty good. So if I can get this flash grazed, take the majority of the biomass out, if we can get a rain following that, I think our interseeding will have a shot at creating some biomass a little later on in the season. It is well established that compost will improve yields, add fertility, add nitrogen to your resource base, and help that, you know, kind of prime the pump for carbon sequestration, just because you're getting so much activity and life in the soil if you're utilizing good compost. The compost that we bought came from State Line Compost, and it's certified organic. The cost of the compost was about $1,200 an acre. What we did in this particular test site is we added 12 ton of compost plus the interseeding that will be grazed, so considerably expensive. So we're going to have to see incredible biomass production going through the summer, and then see better yield results going into subsequent years in order for that to pencil. The seeding of this really wasn't too bad. We put in some expensive things and some crazy stuff just to see if it would work. So long as we get some establishment and kind of fill in these bare patches in between my perennial grasses, will probably be worth the chips, but time will tell as we run that through the budget. We're taking forage clippings before we go in and graze so we can better understand what the yield results are of the different sites. We expect to see a dramatic increase in soil carbon. We're also going to be doing dung beetle counts in midsummer to see how increased forage production and fertility and tilth and soil health will transform into keystone species health and productivity as well. And then, like I say, there's a pollinator species counts and several other metrics that we're going to be gathering in terms of biodiversity as well. So we're looking at both leading indicators as managers to better understand when to put cattle and how to take these management actions. But as far as research goes, they're really wanting to better understand the lagging indicators, right? Soil carbon, biodiversity changes, those types of situations don't happen overnight. In fact, from within the year, you're going to have dramatic variations in soil carbon due to fluctuations in moisture and temperature and the respiration of the biology in the soil consuming that carbon and having that flux. So this particular project is spaced over 3 years. So the idea of adding both compost and interseeding together is just trying to figure out if we can get more and more diverse rooting structures in the soil. How quickly can we expand that rhizosphere, that root zone, to increase water holding capacity, aggregate stability, and fertility for subsequent crops and years, and increase that growing season throughout the summer. And then all of them tested together, right? So we've got planned grazing, we've got composting, and we've got interseeding, and then each of those things independent. We can then figure out which is the best way to increase soil health in this part of the world, both speed in which soil health is increased, but then, you know, profitability back to the ranch, right? Because none of this stuff makes sense unless it increases overall profit or operating potential on a landscape.